Well, hello, everybody. Well, that's not my screen, but I want to thank you for being here and holding a keynote at this workshop. Well, it's a pity that we couldn't have met in Münster, but at least we meet over here. Thank you, Bernd, for those words and the recapitulation of our time over here in Kiel. And we played together some time ago in a handball team. You were a circle runner and you got some passes from me to throw a goal. So that's a long time ago, but we enjoyed this pretty much. Well, the topic psychological and social demands in Paralympic athletes. I took the chance to put some of the knowledge about Paralympic athletes or the psychology of people with a disability. I put this into the perspective of doping. And so this will be my main topic to see the line or to draw the line between the demands people with a disability have and the demands of the doping system and to be successful in sports. Well, in the background, you see the institute. Bernd knows where we are around, but we will leave this picture and come to the next transparency. Well, I will talk about psychological and social demands and doping. And the next point will be, that's the point, playing with fire. That's doping is all about. And the next will be, there are many loopholes, and we have to be aware of those loopholes in our sport system. There are many risk factors when you play with fire and for your health. And it's also a matter of fact that sport is a field where cheating is not allowed, and it will destroy the thoughts of fairness in the field. Well, we talk about athletes' personality, and we talk about the scientific approach to get into this field, and we will use a psycho-educational perspective. This will be pretty new for the most of you. I will put some studies, some empirical results into the context of a psycho-educational model. We will talk about prevention at the end, and there will be the position of significant others. That's family or coaches or teammates. And finally, I got an impact from the CLEAN project. Maybe we see it on the next transparency. That's a result of your work. And I really like this wording: CLEAN, C, lead to the conversation, L, change the lens, E, advocate for change to rebalance the system so that education is recognized, A, adopt an athlete focus, and N, create a network. So I like this pretty much, and this helped me to find a perspective for my speech. Well, when you see the overview, I will introduce the topic, then I will go to issues in parasports. I have the point coping with disability, and then I will show you and introduce my model. This model is used to put in the risk factors, and I will talk about some prevention strategies I got from the literature, and finally we have a take-home message. Okay, now we start with the issues in parasports, and those are yeah, what I got out of the literature was, out of interviews, you're risking your life to win a damn race. And this is a point we have to talk about ethics. We have to talk to see the perspective doping has in the life of athletes, or in the life of athlete with a disability. And there are ethics we have to talk about in this field. I will just show some incidents, maybe come back again, the incidents of doping cases. Most I will talk about is substance abuse and boosting, but I will come back to this point later. I will present something about a life cycle model. And in this point, I will not talk about diagnostics. This would be another speech when we get deeper into this field. So the incidents of positive cases, I got the information from Van de Vliet from 2012. That the incidence of anti-doping rule violations in Paralympic sport seems to be low. It seems to be low. And from the World Agency of Doping, there's only 1% of the doping control that leads to rule violations. But when you try to get more information, many authors state that more testing will increase the likelihood of athletes being caught. So we need more tests in the field. But there's also this Paralympic specific phenomenon. So athletes may require particular medical treatment due to their impairment. And so this is close to the fact of using substances or medical medicine for other uses. Another point, maybe the next one. I found in the study from Weber et al. She's a colleague from Austria. She stated that, or the group stated that doping in disabled sport is becoming more of an issue due to the growing profile of the sport. So the growing profile of the sport. And these are actual data. 159 anti-doping rule violations have been stated between 2013 and 2018. And she stated, or the paper stated, mainly these violations are driven by money. So there seems to be an imbalance in how disabled athletes have access or further opportunities in sport. That's a problem we have to be aware of. What is the situation of those athletes? And there's this point in poorer countries, there might be much more effort in gaining success and be successful at certain competitions. The group stated, it's in another paper, that there are environmental influences. So the context, the country, the level of competition is an issue of doping. There are situational factors like critical incidents, like an injury or performance dips. They play an important role. Or there are social agents, coaches, teammates, and at this point, peers outside the sports world. They put pressure on athletes' behavior. So we have to keep in mind these three factors I will talk about later. Well, there's this point, you're risking your life to win a damn race. 4 points. I guess the group talked about these, the research group talked about these 4 parts, and I will just give some information about about substance abuse and boosting. So I will start with substance abuse. there are, well, performance-enhancing substances. So that's about 1% of rule violations, depends on testing. And Van de Vliet had, well, stated that a total of 60 anti-doping rule violations were caught since 2000. And you see this activity 37 in powerlifting. So there seem to be some sports that are more prone to doping. So the testing program by IPC is alpine skiing, athletics, cycling, Nordic skiing, powerlifting, rowing, and swimming. How is the situation in autonomic dysreflexia and boosting? I know it's better from the word boosting. This is a highest level spinal, or athletes have a high level spinal injury. They have a limited cardiac output and oxygen uptake. So they don't have this high, well, I don't get the word. They have the blood exposure to the organs as people have who are not limited at high level spinal injury. So they can use peripheral stimuli for to confront the pressure on the bladder, and this will lead to increased blood pressure. And so they can be more, they have a better capacity for their performance. But this is often dangerous and can create acute medical complications. And there are some data that 20% of men had used autonomic dysreflexia to enhance performance. This is a problem in middle and long distance activities, marathon, and wheelchair rugby. So the next one, well, I talked about this life cycle model. So this is also an issue in Paralympic sports. That's an issue in the whole sports system. You have this kind of cycle. There's an entry, a choice to take some medication, or there is cheating with the rules, or whatever. There's a goal commitment by the person, the execution. There's a feedback. Could I achieve my goal or not? There's this goal evaluation and adjustment. Do I continue? Will continue with my doping things? Is there another entry, or is there an exit? So this is kind of a cycle model we have to be aware of in doping in general, that there might be a career of doping. So the next point, I'm going to coping with disability. So that's a disability topic. So when you talk about coping with disability, well, there is a critical life event when you're acquiring your disability. Maybe some athletes have a lifelong disability, but we have many, many athletes in the para sports system that had an accident or whatever. So that's one point to cope with the disability. The other point is when you are active in your sport, there might be an injury, there might be a dip in performance, there might be problems with the contract. So there are also critical life events throughout the career. There are some different styles in coping. Might be a defensive coping or active coping. So active coping to change the situation, defensive coping to work with your emotions. And there also might be some other factors, personal factors with the self-concept, with the locus of control, self-destruction tendencies, or the self-efficacy problem might be of a problem. So I can't talk about all the things, but I took one perspective. That's a concept that's used for the elderly sport in Germany. So there are 4 different styles to cope with the situation with, becoming older, or I also used this for disability. There are 4 styles: achievement, acceptance, giving up, or become bitter. And I will talk to you, or I will explain it on the other transparency. So achievement is, I would say, it's the positive factor. So you have your handicap, you are an athlete, you are in an active discussion, you're in training process, your interests and social relations are going well, you are perceiving yourself competent, you have the perception that your future can be formed. The next style, the acceptance style, is, well, it's also some kind of positive, but you're reflecting about your disability, maybe about your situation, but you think about the remaining opportunities. The situation is perceived by you as less changeable, but you still have plans for the future. So in the next transparency, you see the negative styles. So there's the giving up style of dejection. You see many physical problems. Striving for change is less attractive, and the future is negative, connotated. So the glass is half empty and not half full. And the last style is become bitter, quarrel with faith, disappointed, and physical problems, no engagement for future. So this is a model we used in the research for the elderly, but I think those strategies, acceptance, for example, or maybe also the other styles, might be present in some of our athletes, and this has an impact on their behavior. So we go on, and so when winning is everything, I took this from this title from Donahue, Rip, and Valorant, and this is this dualistic model of passion. So maybe this is kind of new for many of you, but I like this approach. This is an approach that you measure whether or not your athletes have an harmonious or obsessive sport perspective. So, and the studies of, this is the Valorant group, they show that those people who have an obsessive sport perspective even tend more to be or to use aggressiveness in certain situations. So when you're getting into a situation that affords more or less aggressiveness, they will use, or they will account for a more aggressive perspective, and this is not counted for the group with this harmonious sport perspective. I think this will be a perspective for further research to see how your athletes are coping with their sports, with their disability, what kind of sport perspective they are on. Okay, so I'm getting to the next point, and I get to my loved model. So what kind of model is this? I guess some of the German colleagues, they know it. It's an educational model by Nolting and Paulus. It's a psycho-educational perspective. I like that. It's a prognostic model to explain behavior. I like this also. And it's taking in account actual demands and developmental factors. So we see it on the next picture. So this is the model. So you see in the middle, I guess you can take the, so you see different parts. You see current inner processes, current behavior. So that's the inner the inner world of the athletes. To the right, you see situational factors. To the left, you see personal factors. So this is a classical interactional model we use in psychology quite much, that the behavior is a function of situation and personality. But furthermore, you see in this model the developmental factors down to the left. So there are genes, family, education. So there is the life experience that forms the personality. And this is pretty new. To the right, they took in the interpersonal relations. So these are the relations to significant others. So when we get through, I guess I have some quite many. So this is in the middle, then you take the next one. This is the situation. Well, I just explained it, then to the left, then to down, and the interpersonal relations. So I put this into perspective of an athlete with a disability. Maybe you take the next one. So when you see there's current behavior doping, and there are current inner processes, striving for success, obsessive sport perspective. So I put in my perspective I was talking about beforehand. And the next one, you see situational factors. So there is a big pressure on this person qualifying for the Paralympics. So what kind of personality we see? There will be high sport motivation and some tendency for perfectionism. So you can also see other personal or personality constructs. I just put these two in perspective. And what are the developmental factors? He had an accident. He had a soccer career beforehand. So he was, the person is used to be in the training process, and is using a high training load. And the interpersonal relations are high expectancies by coaches and the family. So I take this just as a descriptive model. And when we move further on, it's the model that takes us through those risk factors. The main risk factors I'm focusing on is a concept from Able-Bodied Elite Sport from my colleague Annemarie Elbe. Now she is in Leipzig, and Vasilis Barkoukis. And they had pointed out three main factors in doping. That's personality, self-esteem, morality, perfectionism, and some more. Situational factors, access to doping substances, availability or peer influence, and systematic factors, team environment, and anti-doping policies. So now in the next transparency, you see my model. And yes, I have changed it from my Apple system to Microsoft. So you see those personal factors. We will just put this in perspective. On the next transparency, you see a study. It's a meta-analysis by Newtumanis. So they found out in 63 independent data sets that the most positive attitudes towards doping, those have the strongest positive correlates, were positive attitudes towards doping. Morality and self-efficacy had the strongest negative association. And in path analysis, they found out that attitudes, perceived norms, and self-efficacy predicted intentions to dope and doping behaviors. So this is a big meta-analysis from non-disability sports, but I guess we can just see the way to do some of the research in this field. In the next transparency, we will focus on situational factors. And there that may be access, availability, I put in those words. And in the study I found from, maybe on the next one, from Whittaker, and there's also Andrea Petrosi and Beckhaus, some situational factors. So this was a study about the willingness to dope with 729 person in a cross-sectional study. So they found out that the most willing to dope were people who were suffering an injury, they had a dip in performance, or they were thinking others are doping and getting away with this. So I took this in perspective of situational factors. There are some more data in the study, but I think these factors we have to talk about. Well, that's the developmental factor, genes, family, education. I took a model to describe this. That's the incremental model of doping behavior, also from Petrosi. And this, well, doping can be or is a learned goal-oriented behavior, develops over time out of habitual use of accepted performance-enhancing strategies. And I think this is a pretty good model. So we have the grassroots sport, normal diet and lifestyle. Then there is the phase of talent, ID, and development. So conscious diet and lifestyle, acceptable nutritional supplements. There we talk about supplements. That's a big topic. And then comes the gray zone of herbs, supplements, and OTC medications. And it's on the way to high performance. And maybe it's going to this prohibited substances and methods. So when the enjoyment goals are going to mastery goals and up to performance goals. So there might be this way also in the development of an athlete we have to be aware of. So I guess I'm pretty good in my time. I take the next transparency, and we have interpersonal relations, coach, family, and friends. And I took the study of the group around Katrin Weber again. So this group did a semi-structured interview study with coaches from Germany and from coaches from the United Kingdom. And so the main risk factors they found out is money and pressure to win. So earn prize money or funding or getting a sponsorship. Well, that's one citation. If you win a Paralympic gold medal, you're gonna win life-changing amount of money. So, and I think the last sentence is also worth to be read. Coaches prefer to refer responsibility for doping prevention to their national anti-doping organization rather than taking on personal responsibility for anti-doping efforts. I think we have to talk about this later on, how we can deal with this problem. So I'm almost at the end of my model, but I put in another point I got from many publications. So there are also systemic factors, team environment, anti-doping policies. And I guess later on, we will talk about this in depth. Well, now I'm coming to the prevention strategies. There I put some concepts from different colleagues. So, for example, Erickson and his group talk about protective factors, a strong moral stance against cheating. That's very idealistic, but it's a big point. More self-control and identity beyond sport. I guess That's very serious point, an identity beyond sport. And this is also in line with my concept of obsessive sport, an obsessive sport objective. And the point resilience to social group pressures, that's also a big point. What other protective factors I got? So there are from Annemarie Elbe and Barkuke's prevention strategies. So the most common prevention strategies are regular doping controls and punishments for positive tests, detection and deterrence approach. We always hear these wording. There are education programs. The target are mostly young athletes because their personality characteristics and attitudes are still developing. Okay, that's a big point to start with young athletes. And they stated simple knowledge transfer is just not enough to change athletes' beliefs and attitudes. We should be aware of it. So there are some more prevention strategies. Maybe on the next transparency. So there's this, well, we know, everyone knows this rational cognitive approach. So that's a mixture of knowledge, skills, and adequate affection. So we talk about values, self-awareness, and so on, and self-worth. So that's one approach. Another approach is to empower this, to use the empowerment strategy for especially that's right, young athletes, the existing resources and competencies for young adults. And there, this is a nice concept from my colleague Annemarie Elbe and Ralf Brandt from Potsdam, the ethical decision-making training. So you get into different sport-specific dilemma situations related to coping, and you have to see how you act in these situations, and you can discuss these kind of situations. Okay, so I got another one, and I guess that's from the group who is working in this field. I only took Andrea Prochoshi. So for clean athlete identity, so there is the value of early experiences and love of sport, so a harmonious sport concept. There is clean athlete identity, performance enhancement is highly idiosyncratic. It's individually based, and we have to look on the individual athlete. Clean athlete identity is reinforced but not created, depends on value-based education. Clean athlete identity, disbelief and skepticism that clean sport could be achieved. This was evident in the study those authors are talking about. And problems of anti-doping can be identified as systemic. Thus, solutions must also be systemic. So I talked about today about a very individualistic and social driven approaches. So I'm very curious about that research group who is will be talking next today. So, and this is also something I want to admit. So when you see my model, you can also use this as a prevention program when you see, or when you just have the idea to see your athletes, to see the situational factors, the personality of your athlete, how the athlete has been developed, and how the coaches, parents, and staff are working with the athlete. You may use this also to get more information about the current inner processes of your athlete. So I'm getting to my last point, the take-home message. That's very short. I guess I talked about the issue of doping in para sports, we have to be aware of it and we have to think about that. I just took the perspective of substance abuse boosting and not on technical doping or the classification problem. I tried to put on a psychological perspective to see different ways to cope with this problem. There are many risk factors. I found some studies and to indicate how we can organize these risk factors in a big model, for example. And I talked about some prevention strategies, and I guess that's a big point for the discussion. So now there's my last one. Maybe you are doing 2 clicks and another one. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Manfred. Thank you very much. Excellent. We have room for some questions from the audience. Don't be so shy. From your experience as chair of the board from the Federal Institute of Sports Science, so do you think the topic we deal with the last 2 days here, clean athletes in parasport, is a topic which is motivating for research of German? You have you have the information from the German colleagues or so. So is this a topic which is attractive to ask for funding?
Well, I guess for funding, it's good to ask. Well, in Germany, we have the German anti-doping organization, the NADA, the national organization. And you talked about the board at the Bundesinstitut, at the federal institution. We have there also a person who is in charge for doping, but doping in general. Well, in the preparation of my speech, I switched from, not disability doping concepts to concepts that have the direction into the parasport, and there are not so many working groups on that, but it's a big topic. It becomes more and more substantial for the sports system, because the sports system is growing. So I think we should work on it, but I know in the German field of scientists, there are only a few who work on that topic, doping in parasport.
Okay, thank you. So, other questions? Andrea?
It's slightly unfair, probably, because I just listened to be cited so many times about models trying to explain why athletes dope. But if I take you back to your statistics about prevalence of doping, okay, we can argue whether it's 1% or slightly more than 1%, but the majority don't dope. Wouldn't it be better to focus on understanding why they don't, rather than try to understand why the 1% do?
Sure, there are also some papers that talk about the people who do not dope, and I think that's a more positive approach to deal with it. But we have to put it into perspective to educate our athletes, and especially to educate young athletes to be or to try to find positive ways to deal with performance enhancement and well, qualifying for big events. I follow your opinion, and I like this positive approach, but we also have to focus on problematic situations, and so I think that, well, there are some personal problems behind these doping affairs. So we have to point, or we have to do more research to find out the balance or the disbalance of doping and non-doping.
Okay, thank you. So we have the last minute. So one question is possible. One last question. No, I don't see any question. Manfred, many thanks for your great presentation. Many thanks.
You're welcome.
And enjoy the day. Thank you.
Okay.